What's up, everybody? It's Greg with Delta, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And we bring on guest speakers. Today, I am completely humbled and honored to bring on a very special guest. His name is Mr. Rick Yarosh. And I've heard his story many a times when I was in the military, but I think it's going to be more powerful you hearing it from him today. Rick, how are you doing?
Thank you, Greg. I'm doing amazing, man. I'm doing amazing. And I will tell you right now, you nailed my last name, which is a very uncommon thing to do. So good job there. And thanks for having me today. It's an honor to be here with you.
Dude, it's an honor to have you, brother. It really is. So for those of you that do not know Rick and never heard a story, Rick is a husband and father of two, and he retired a U.S. Army sergeant. He is also an expert in hope. Hold on, possibilities exist. Rick was tortured, or sorry, Rick has toured the country as a motivational speaker, but both solo and with Sweethearts and Heroes, directed and co-founded by Tom Murphy of St. Albans VT. Rick was deployed to Iraq in December 2005. On September 1st, 2006, he was severely injured by an IED, improvised explosive device, in Abu Ghraib. For half a year, Rick recovered at the Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas, fighting through second and third degree burns on more than 60% of his body. His right leg was amputated below the knee. He also lost both his ears, his nose, multiple fingers, and most of the function in his hands. Rick says the only reason he would change that fateful moment is if he could bring back his brothers in arms that he lost in combat, Sergeant Luis Montez and Sergeant First Class Anthony Vanetz. Rick has spoken to and inspired millions of people from all walks of life, including sports teams, schools, churches, military groups, and nonprofits for his heroic service. He received the Purple Heart. Rick, I can't wait to. I'm gonna turn it over, bro.
No,
talk about. You know what was that? What was that like? That experience on that day, and then just fighting through to be, because you're a super positive person, man. Just like the positivity and the light radiating off of you.
Yeah,
is infectious.
So, like you said the word torture. I was certainly tortured in that hospital many times by the nurses and the doctors that were there, and I think they would agree with that. They've tortured me in the hospital during my recovery. I talk about my nurses and my doctors, and they're the angels in my life. I certainly would not be here today if it wasn't for the care they gave me, but not only that, the push they gave me when I didn't want to push anymore, and dealing with all those difficult things, they pushed me through a lot of that. But in that bio that you shared, the most important part was almost the very first thing you said. I'm a father of two and a husband. My wife and my two girls, Amy, my wife, and my two girls, Tenley and Grace, like those are my life. And I say it's the most important part of my story because like it was a journey to get to them, to get them to be in my life, just all the things that I had to get through, all the things that I had to go through. But all those things led me to them. So I'm going to share with you my story of how it all led me to them. So I was a cavalry scout. I went through Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Huh?
Yeah, that's right. 2004. If you ain't Cav, you ain't. I'm not going to say it because I don't say it too often.
You ain't Cav, right. You ain't shit.
You nailed it. So if you ain't Cav, you ain't shit. That's right. So I am a scout, proud scout, and joined in 2004. Got to Fort Hood, Texas. 4th Infantry Division is who I was attached to. And then I was there for a year and then deployed. It's an interesting place. Killeen, Texas, Coppers Cove, all those places.
Harker Heights.
Spent a lot of time in Austin, Texas. There's a little more going on there.
Yeah.
But, I didn't really know what I was getting into when I joined. And this isn't something I share that often, actually. Right before we deployed, so I was in Fort Hood for a year, and right before we deployed, my our sergeant major, sat us down. So I was a part of 122 Infantry, and he sat us down and, kind of that hoorah talk before we go overseas. And one of the things that he said when he first started was, "You're not all coming home." Just straight up with us, like, you're not all coming home. And it was like a rude awakening, like, whoa. And I knew what war looked like, from my buddies who had been there before. But I never really thought about not coming home. 21 years old or 22 years old, invincible. That's what you feel like. You're not going to get hurt. You're not going to not make it. And it was true. there were many guys who were sitting around me that day who did not make it home. So we deployed in December of 2005. When we were in Kuwait for a couple of weeks, and then made our trip up to Baghdad. We were in South Baghdad, a place called Fob Falcon. That's where we started off. And 9 months into the deployment, made it 9 months, and went out on a mission like every other day in our Bradley fighting vehicle. And this day was different than most days because this day we hit an IED. Now, we had IEDs before, but nothing like this. And that day, that IED went through the bottom of my vehicle, right through the bottom up into the turret where I was sitting. And those that know anything about the Bradley, also in the turret is where the fuel tank is. And it hit the fuel tank, covering myself, covering my buddies who were in the vehicle with me, Sergeant Montes, Specialist Lowe, in fuel, and instantly we were all on fire. And I knew the first thing that I had to do, if I was going to survive even the next, few minutes, I couldn't think about tomorrow or the next day or a week from now. It didn't matter, those things. I had to survive that moment. And the only thing I could do was get out of the vehicle. That's how I had to start. So every day when I climbed into the Bradley, I closed the hatch cover behind me because most people know that when you're going on a patrol, you're supposed to keep those hatches closed, especially if you're in a combat situation, in case we ever got hit with chemicals. So we closed the hatches. But that day when I climbed in, I actually didn't close the hatch cover behind me. Thank God. Because if I had, there's no way I would have found that little tiny lever that was above my head that I would have had to hit to open up the hatch cover above me. There's no way. With the chaos, the smoke, the fire, it wasn't happening. So thankfully, I didn't close it, and I was able to just climb through the top. Once I got to the top, the next thing I knew I had to do was I had to get off of that vehicle. I had to get away from the fire. Problem was, I didn't have time to climb down because I was totally engulfed in flames. So I had to jump. And 10 feet from the top of the turret to the ground. So it's a long ways down, but that's a manageable jump in the perfect circumstance, but it wasn't obviously the perfect circumstance because of the fire and the smoke. I couldn't see. So that second difficult thing was the fact that I was going to have to make that jump blind. And that's what I did. I just took a leap of faith, hoped that I would clear the side of the Bradley, hoped that I would make it to the ground, and hoped that I would do it safely. But when I landed on the ground, it was not safely. I landed and I couldn't brace myself for the landing because I couldn't see the ground. And when I landed, I snapped my leg. I broke my right leg below my knee and ended up in an amputation of my leg later on in the hospital. Now, this is where my story gets hopeless, truly, because that's when I was on the ground and I was on fire. The next step I have to do is put that fire out. I got out of the vehicle. I got off of the vehicle. Now I got to get that fire out. And I did what I was taught to do. Stop, drop, and roll. That's what we do when we catch on fire. We learned that 4 or 5 years old. So I rolled around on the ground and I tried to put the fire out, but I could not because there was too much fuel. There was too much fire. Like stop, drop, and roll. I'm sure it works if your shirt is on fire or your pant leg is on fire. Like not if your entire body is engulfed in flames. And then people were like, well, why didn't you just get up and run? Well, remember, my leg is broken. I can't move. I can't stand. I actually did try to stand and realized my leg was busted. And even if I could, where was I going? My face is on fire. I couldn't see anything. I had no clue. So the most hopeless situation of my life was in this moment because that's when I laid on my back after I tried those things and I looked up into the sky and I just gave up. Like I accepted the fact that I would die in that moment. I didn't know what else to do. I tried the things I knew what to do. Now today, in my life today, I know that I may not know the answer of what to do in life-threatening situations, but I know that the answer is never nothing. That I know. And so I don't know what I should exactly have done in that moment, but it was something. And I had given up. And, hope to me stands for hold on, possibilities exist. And at that time, I wasn't holding on for any possibilities that existed. I didn't know that I'd be sitting with you here today, Greg. I had no idea that I'd be presenting to students in this world, almost 2 million at this point. I never knew I'd have a wife and girls. And those are the possibilities that I'm talking about. We don't know sometimes what they are. But if we hold on through really difficult things, we can find out what they are. And today I found out what those things were. But in that day in Iraq, when I talk about this story, people are like, okay, hold on, possibilities exist. That's life and death stuff. Yes, in my situation that day it was, but it's not only life and death. Like we all deal with difficult things in our life. And sometimes those things aren't just life and death situations. They're things that maybe we love doing, something that we've committed ourselves to, what we've been doing for a long time. And then all of a sudden that thing has become really difficult. And we say to ourselves, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. It's too hard. If you give up on that thing that you've committed yourself to and you say, you know what, I'm done. Okay. You're never going to see the results that come from getting through it. You're never going to get to see the possibilities that exist. You're never going to experience the reward that comes from getting through those difficult things. And I just know that when something is extremely difficult, that just means there's a bigger reward in the end. When you get through that really difficult things, there's an amazing reward. And sometimes it's just really hard to see what that might be. But again, you got to hold on to find out what that reward is, what that possibilities that exist are. So that day in Iraq, thankfully, I only gave up that hope for a second because I ended up rolling in one direction. No idea which direction that was in. Could have been right back to the Bradley. I had no situational awareness in that moment. Thankfully, it was not. I actually was rolling away from it. And I ended up rolling down a little hill and into a canal that was there. A canal that I had no clue was there. But it was just enough water in that canal to put the fire out. Eventually, a couple of my buddies found me in the canal and they carried me out. My buddy Sergeant Vinetz, who you mentioned earlier in my bio, he ended up passing away a couple of years later, actually in a different war in Afghanistan. But he pulled me out, and my other buddy, Staff Sergeant Jackson, pulled me out of the canal and got me up to the top. And about 30 minutes later, the helicopters came and took me away to a hospital in Baghdad. And then from Baghdad, I flew to Landstuhl, Germany. And then in Germany, I flew from there to San Antonio, Texas. And I ended up in that hospital in San Antonio for 6 months. So half of a year I spent in an amazing hospital, honestly. I mentioned my doctors and my nurses and the amazing people that they are. I would not be here today if I did not make it there. Because when I made it to Germany, they called my parents and they told my parents to come to Germany. They said, get your passport. My parents didn't have a passport. They said, get your passport and come to Germany. And basically what they were saying was, you need to come and say goodbye to your son, because Germany wasn't a burn center. And I needed to be somewhere where it was specializing in burns, but I wasn't stable enough to get on the airplane in Germany to fly me to San Antonio. So they didn't think I was, and they had other guys who had to get on that plane and go, and they had to get them back. So they were going to leave me in Germany, and basically that was going to be the end probably for me. My parents were getting their passport, and they got another phone call, and the doctor said, never mind, go to San Antonio. We got them on that plane. They said the stars lined up right. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the fact that I got on that plane that day. That's the hardest part of my story. That really is, talking about Montez for sure is a big part of that, because I miss him every single day, but I talk about him every single day. I mention his name every single day. And the other hard part is my parents, getting that phone call and, the hopelessness that I'm sure they felt, knowing that they were coming to Germany to say goodbye to their son. But that's the beginning, man. That's not the most important part of my story. That's just the beginning of my story. That's what the catalyst of what propelled me to where I'm at today. Mm-hmm. And that's, a father and a husband and a speaker and a restaurant owner and a lot of other things in my life. And, those are the positive things. I got some flaws as well, just like we all do. But those are some of the positive things in my life. And what happened to me that day in Iraq is what led me here. And I'll tell you right now, and we'll move on to whatever you want to go on to after this. That was the best thing that ever happened to me in Iraq. That was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it led to all those things that I just told you about.
Man, that is an incredibly powerful story to hear. I can't imagine the amount of pain that you were in when you jumped off that Bradley and you're trying to roll around, and then you just give up for that brief moment, and you're still on fire. Mm-hmm. Like, it's how many seconds did it take you to open the hatch, get out, contemplate jumping, break your leg, roll around? You've been on fire this entire time, plus the disorientation of like going through the explosion and realizing that you are on fire. It's probably been at least a minute I mean, I'm guessing, but
not quite a minute,
so,
but it was a, and I've done this in my head. I've actually gone over that whole scenario in my head, trying to figure it out. I think it could have been a minute, but I always figured it to be about 30 seconds.
about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So that's a long time to be on fire.
It's a long time. So when I talk to kids in schools and I'm in their classroom with them, I tell them, hey, it's 30 seconds a long time in your life. And they're like, no, like 30 seconds is really short. And then I'm silent for 30 seconds, just out of nowhere. I just don't say a word. And they're all looking at me like really uncomfortable. Like, what is he doing? Like, they want to break the silence. They start talking. They're like, I don't know, something's wrong with Rick. And then 30 seconds later, I say, that was 30 seconds. Was that a long time? And every one of them's like, yeah, it was a really long time. And I say, well, that's how long I was on fire. Like, that's pretty crazy to think about, like 30 seconds in our life. When we're uncomfortable for 30 seconds, it's forever.
Yeah.
When we're having fun for 30 seconds, it's the shortest time of our lives. But when we're uncomfortable, it's extremely long. So I put them in an uncomfortable situation by being quiet like that. And it gives them an understanding of how long it really was that I was on fire. But I just listened to somebody's story the other day, and I believe they said they were on fire for 90 seconds. Like, and it was, it's just unbelievable that somebody can survive that. But that's a testament to the doctors and the nurses and the medical care that we have today. Because, 50 years ago, probably wouldn't have made it through that.
Yeah. Just the amount of pain, like, and just sheer pain that you're going through in that moment when you're like, man, I can't put this fire out. Would it just end it? Like, just end it already. Stop. You know what I'm saying? Like, that must have been the just most traumatic experience in that moment of life.
So, Greg, it's crazy. I had no pain.
Really?
None. So I have kids that when I am in the schools and, they never want to ask that question there, because it's almost like a silly question. Like, did it hurt when you were on fire? And whenever that kid asks that question, all the other kids look at him and like, dude, you're an idiot. Like, why would you ask Rick that question? Like, of course it hurt. And I said, that's the importance of questions. Like, you don't know, you've never been engulfed in flames. How would you know what it feels like? And now I'm not saying that everyone that's engulfed in flames doesn't have pain, but I did not. The fire itself did not hurt. My leg, different story. My leg hurt extremely bad when my buddies grabbed my leg in that canal to carry me out. That was the first time not the first time, but that was when I really realized it was bad. So the pain that I felt that day when I was on fire, it didn't hurt. Now, that is a totally different story than the hospital.
Yeah.
That hospital, it's impossible to explain that pain. When I go to the doctor today and, I have something going on, like, with my skin being burned and, it's very weak in spots and I can get cuts and I can get infections, and I go into the doctor and they're like, what's your pain level 1 to 10? And they say 10 being the most pain you've ever been in. And I'm like, that's just not the right scale, because I got some pain going on right now, but it's a 1 or 0.1 compared to the most pain that I've ever been in. So my scale is just different now. And in that hospital, I always explain it this way. When I was in that hospital and on that burn unit, and I can remember, so military hospital, we got all types. We got Navy SEALs in there. We got special forces guys in there. We got all different types who are recovering from burns, and burns don't discriminate. And it'll take the toughest person you've ever met in your entire life and put them on their knees and make them scream that recovery. I can remember that. I can remember the guys in the other rooms, and I'm sure they heard me as well, screaming. And I can remember being in that shower when they were taking some of that skin that needed to be removed. And that's where they would remove it. Yeah, they call it debriding the skin. I can remember the screams in that shower. And I can also remember dreading the shower. They say, hey, Rick, I've got to take you to the shower today. And it was just like, please. And you would cry. You would say, please, no. Like, please don't take me to the shower. And Please give me a bed bath. Like, you didn't want to have to go into that shower. You just knew it was brutal, but you had to do it. And though that's why I also say those nurses and those doctors, they're angels, because I can't imagine how they felt having to deal with that, with some of the toughest guys they've ever met in their entire life. And that's how they're crying because they have to go take a shower. So, we talk about the pain that day in Iraq. It's nothing. And maybe that's it. Maybe I did feel pain, but it's just nothing compared to the rest of what I felt. So I don't even think about it.
Could be your adrenaline was pumping so hard from the explosion.
Right. It was adrenaline. It was the fact that my nerves were burned through.
Yeah, the nerves burned through like instantaneously. Yeah.
And also, I ended up in shock. I don't think many people remember being in shock, but I can remember, after probably about 4 months into the hospital, my lieutenant came to visit. Well, he visited me more often than that, but he came and he told me the one thing I don't remember. I remember a lot of it. The one thing I don't remember, he said that I kept saying over and over and over. He said I probably said it 1,000 times. Don't let me go into shock. That's what I kept repeating over and over. Don't let me go into shock. Now, I'm not going to lie. I don't know a ton about shock. I learned some in basic training. I can remember that in Fort Knox, but I don't remember. I don't know a ton about shock. So for my mind to go to that and just say, don't let me go into shock. Don't let me go into shock. Don't let me go into shock. I knew that shock was bad. And I can also remember them, somebody coming up and wanting to give me water out of their Camelback or their canteen. And I can remember from basic training, like, if you're in shock, you're not supposed to drink water. And I don't remember why I remember that, honestly, but I remembered it in that moment. And so he didn't give me any water. He wet his shirt and put it in some water and put it over my face and put it on my lips. So I can remember that stuff. But yeah, I went into shock as well. So I think those are the 3 big reasons that I didn't feel it that day.
Yeah.
The hospital, they could have given, and they did. They gave me every pain med they possibly could. That was on Dilaudid for a long time, and Dilaudid is it's heroin times whatever, times a lot. And sometimes it didn't touch the pain that I was. They'd give me morphine or something like that. I'm like, get that away from me. That's not even gonna do anything, and it. But Dilaudid was so strong they couldn't give you a ton. So yeah, I can remember all of it, man. But I'm telling you right now, like, I think about all of that and how painful it was and how crazy it was. And I think about it, and I would go through it all again to get back here. I would go through it all again just to get back to where I'm at today. Because if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And I don't know where I would be. And I hope that I'd be in a really good place, because when I joined the Army, I didn't really know what the heck I was doing with my life. The Army was kind of the answer for that. I'd probably still be in the Army right now, which would be great. But I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing today if that stuff didn't happen. I don't want my parents to have to go through that again, that's for sure. I don't want my buddy to pass away. I don't want Montez to die because he died. He ended up passing away 7 days later in the hospital. Like, I don't want any of those things to happen. So if I could change the day, I guess I would, to save his life, to change it so everybody else didn't have to go through it. But for myself, if I could go through it on my own and get back here, I would. But the problem is I would never get back here on my own. That's impossible. Yeah. I'm here because of the people that surrounded me and the people that helped me get through it.
Going through something like that is just incredibly traumatic and life altering. You have a lot of options of which path you can take. You could have been jaded and upset. It could have broken you, right? But you decided to take a more positive route, which is very admirable. And you decided to inspire and become a motivational speaker and to help people through their own challenging times. Because when you really compare it, you're like, it's like, well, am I on fire right now? Well, no. So I guess it's not that bad. I guess I can, pick up the phone and do more dials and do better in my business, and like, could be worse. And so talk a little bit about the path that you had to walk to get to there, because I'm willing to bet that you probably had some days that you were upset. There's some days that were dark, leading into that and deciding to take a path that was more positive.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of options in life and everything that we do. And sometimes we allow ourselves to have too many options. And, if you eliminate some of the negative options, then it's not an option. Like, one thing outside of those really difficult things today, where I'm at today, one of my biggest struggles in my life is my health. And now I'm not talking about what you see with the burns and stuff like that. I'm talking about the things that I can control. And that's my weight. I've always struggled with it. It's just a mindset thing that I've always had a hard time with. But when you eliminate options, you lose the weight. Like with me, I did something, it was probably 8 years ago, and I wanted to lose 60 pounds. And I had 60 pounds to lose, but it's just something I've always struggled with. So I had a buddy say, you know what, how about we do this? How about you write me a check and write it to somebody that you do not like? And if you fail, that person gets your money. So I wrote a check to the Westboro Baptist Church. And I don't know if any of you listening knows who the Westboro Baptist Church is, but they are not a good group of people. Their website is godhatesfags.com. They protest military funerals. They are not a good group. So I'm sure they're on it. I'm sure they're a hate group. So if my money went to them, I'm sure I would get on some kind of list. But the point is, I did that because I eliminated failure as an option. And that's when I'm like, I don't want to do that again. That's just because I know I might take the easy way out and choose failure. But when I eliminate that and I say, you know what, I'm going to do this, and that group's going to get my check if I don't do this, I've eliminated all the other options. So that's kind of how I've done a lot of things in my life. I've eliminated all those negative options. I don't want to live my life negatively, but in the beginning, it wasn't as easy as me saying that. In the beginning, I did want to give up too many times. I just know I'll never get there again because of the difficult things that I already went through.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, like seeing my face for the first time when I was in that hospital, 4 months into my hospital stay is when I saw my face. My doctors and my nurses, my parents, they didn't want me to see my face. They covered the only mirror in my room, actually, with old pictures. So that way, if I ever saw myself, or actually if I ever went by that mirror, I couldn't see myself because they did not want me to see myself. I was dealing with a lot already. So one day I went out into the hallway. I was in that room all the time, 24/7, basically. And I went out into the hallway one day and I passed by a Marine who was injured in Afghanistan. And when I saw that Marine, I couldn't believe how bad he looked. His burns were really bad, almost how scary he looked. And in my mind, I was saying to myself, thank God I don't look that bad. Thank God I don't look like him. But I didn't know what I looked like. I hadn't seen myself. But I've never seen anything like him in my life. So how could I also look like that? Like, if I've never seen anything like him, there can't be two. So thank God I don't look that bad. So after an hour in that hallway that day, I went back to my room. And then about a week later, I was laying in my bed and I asked my mom for my laptop that I had over in Iraq with me. And I had all my pictures on that laptop, all the pictures I took from Iraq. And I wanted to look at the old days, the good old days, reminisce. So she brought me my laptop and she opened up the cover. And when she opened up the cover, guess what I saw? My reflection. For the first time in 4 months, I saw my face. And like I said, my parents didn't want me to see myself, and this was an accident. And I'll tell you right now, they were right for me to not want to see it, because as soon as I saw my face, it was the same scenario as in Iraq when I was laying on my back and on fire. This time I wasn't on fire physically, but mentally I was, because I was like, what's the point in me ever getting out of the hospital looking like that? Like that Marine that I saw a week earlier when I was like, thank God I don't look like him. I look just as bad as he did. And I told my mom that day, I said, leave me alone. I said, no more medication. I don't care if I live or die. Like, what's the point in me getting out of here? Who's going to accept me? Who's going to give me opportunity? And, people can hear that story and some people can be like, psh, like Rick, oh man, what a wimp. But I had no clue how to deal with such a big change in my life that early on with all the things that I was going through. So, that hopelessness that I felt that day in Iraq, it was very similar to that hopelessness I felt that day in the hospital. And the hospital knew they had to do something about it. Like, all these stories that I tell, there's a common theme to it. And it's the fact that I didn't get through it on my own. And, you know, people sometimes they fight and fight by themselves. And I believe that number 22 a day, and I don't know if that's an accurate number anymore. I don't know what the number is of soldiers, veterans, military personnel who take their own lives. That number is a lot of the times because we try to get through way too much on our own. We don't want to admit to other people that we can't do it by ourselves. But who cares? Like, if you can't do it on your own, and if you never ask for help, you won't get through it.
Yeah.
That's simple things. That's life-threatening things. You won't get through it. We got to ask for help when it's needed. So that day, the hospital knew they had to do something about it. They brought in my psychologist. He sat down with me, talked to me for an hour like a psychologist would, like a doctor would, straight from the book, basically. And I kept telling him, leave me alone. Like, you can't help me. You don't look like me. You've never been through anything I've been through like this. So just beat it. Get out of my room. And he knew that it wasn't helping. So he changed the subject entirely, started talking to me about dead spiders. And I was like, what the hell's this guy doing? I mean, he was an Army guy, so that was part of it. Probably not the best training in the world. But I was really like, what is this guy doing? I'm freaking out right now. And he wants to talk dead spiders. That conversation only lasted about 5 minutes, because he stands up and he leaves the room. And I was glad. I'm like, I didn't want him here. He can't help me anyway. So see ya. He was only gone for about a minute though. And he came back in the room. And this time he was carrying something, a big glass jar full of dead spiders. And I was just like, what the hell? Like, this guy is whacked. He's, you know, hopeless people in life. This is just a life thing. Hopeless people, they do some crazy things. And sometimes that crazy thing is giving up. And whatever led to that hopelessness, I don't know what it is, but hopelessness in the end, it leads to people giving up. And that day, that was where I was. That was the crazy decision that I was making. Again, told my mom, no more medication. And I didn't know what he was doing that day, but I said I believed I was crazy. But when he walked in the room with those spiders, I realized that I wasn't crazy. He was the crazy one. Like, he needed a psychologist to sit down with him and talk about his life. But what he was doing worked. I didn't know what he was doing in that moment. It took me years to figure it out. But all he was doing was he was taking my mind away from that. He took the time. He didn't go by the book and then leave my room and say, I can't help him.
Yeah.
He went by the book, said, this isn't working. I got to do something different. And he came back in and he took I forgot an hour earlier, I told my own mom to her face that I don't care if I lived or died. He took me away from that. And in the end, what he did for me was give me hope. That hope that I'm talking about, hold on, possibilities exist. Without him and the hope he gave me, I don't see these possibilities today, because I'm probably not here. We got to hold on to find out what they are. And we need people along the way to give us that hope. And we also have hope that we can give to other people.
Yeah.
Like, every one of us was born with it. We can give it to other people when they're struggling. And sometimes it is picking up the phone for the person that you might not want to talk to that day. But maybe they need you to talk to them that day. So I just think about that stuff. That was one of the stories along my recovery. You know, and in that story, you know, I talked about when I saw my face and who's going to accept me, who's going to love me. That's a big one that guys don't want to talk about. And nobody wants to hear me say, who wants to wake up next to that guy the way he looks? You know, if I say that, it's a little easier. But when somebody else would say that, they're like, ooh, how could you say that about Rick? Well, that's just the truth. Who wants to wake up next to the guy with hands like this, with a nose like I have, like my ears gone, my nose gone, like my hair half gone? Like, who wants to choose to do that? And I didn't think that would ever happen. And then, you know, years later, I met my wife, Amy. And but that's the power of hope. Like, I can sell hope to people. HOPE, hold on, possibilities exist. And at that time, I was still not believing it until I met Amy. There were parts of it that I didn't believe. Like, hold on, Rick, you'll find somebody who loves you. You know, and I've been married to Amy for going on 6 years now. So, like, we have to hold on to find out that the possibilities are amazing. And that's one of those possibilities, my wife and my two girls. So that's just one of those hopeless stories that I felt. But I'm telling you right now, there are probably 100 more of them.
That's so amazing. That's so amazing. What got you into the public speaking space?
saying something really stupid to somebody one day. Again, product, of the people around me. This is, again, the common theme. I went to an event after I got out of the hospital, and my mom signed me up for it. I did not want to go because I was in rough shape. I didn't want to leave my comfort zone. My comfort zone for 6 months was the hospital.
Yeah.
After that, my comfort zone was the little apartment that I stayed in across the street from the hospital, but not far removed from the hospital. So she signed me up for an event in Houston, 2 hours away from San Antonio, and I did not want to go. I was actually in Sugar Land, Texas. I did not want to go. I was terrified of going. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to ride in my mom's van to the event. They were going to bring a bus to bus everybody over. And I was terrified that this bus wouldn't have a lift. Like, they didn't prepare for me, so they probably aren't going to have a lift, and I'm going to have to figure out how to get on this bus. And I mean, of course they're going to have a lift, honestly. It wasn't just me that was going. It was going to be a bunch of guys who were missing legs and other limbs and paraplegics, quadriplegics. Like, they were going to have a lift. But I was so afraid that I started training, basically, to figure out how to get on a bus without a lift. So I had splints built for my hands, and they covered my wrist, made my wrists strong because I lost a lot of movement in my wrists, and also they became very weak. So I had these splints that kept my wrists straight and strong. And I would practice on stairs, just lifting myself up, sitting down on my butt and pushing myself up the stairs. So if the bus didn't have a lift, I could still get on. And the day comes where this event is, we're going to go to Sugar Land, and bus pulls up and there's no lift. And I was like, whoa, like, okay, thank God I prepared for this. And I look around and I see all these other guys who can't get on the bus because they didn't practice. And I didn't look at them and be like, haha, dudes, you didn't practice for this scenario. I did. Obviously I didn't do that, but they actually had to make the decision on whether or not they were going to, these are tough guys. These are those guys that I mentioned in the hospital, those SEALs, those special forces guys, those Army guys, those Marines, the Air Force guys. They now we're going to have to get picked up and carried onto the bus if they decided to go. And that was a really tough decision for them. All of them decided to get on, thank God. But we go to this event, we get there. A guy apologizes that put it on. It was just a mistake with the bus company. And the day after I get there, same guy who put the thing on, he came up to me and he said, "What do you want to do?" Like, that was his question to me. And at the time I just really wanted to recover because I was still a disaster. I didn't have my prosthetic yet. I was still in my wheelchair. I was a mess. I couldn't do anything on my own. And but that's not what I said to him. I didn't say I want to recover. I said I want to be a public speaker. And I have no idea why I said something so stupid, because that was terrifying to me. Like, being a public speaker was absolutely terrifying. I didn't want to be a public speaker. Why would I say something so ridiculous? I'm pretty sure I got it from being in the hospital and listening to a guy named Dave Reaver. Dave was a Vietnam veteran who was burned very badly. And I watched some shows on him. That's what he was doing. So he made a lot out of his life because he decided to put himself out there and share his story. So I watched him, and I think maybe that's why I said it to that guy that day. And that guy, he's not a public speaker, this guy that I'm telling this to. So obviously he can't really help me in that world. But that's what he said. He's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's great. Like, maybe we can help you with that." And then he walks away, and I was like, okay, that's just what people say. Thank God, because I don't really want to be a public speaker. And then, I go home back to my apartment, and a week later he calls. And he says, "Hey, I got you a public speaking engagement." I was like, "You got to be kidding me." Like, the one guy who follows through with what he says he's going to do, I tell him I want to be a public speaker. Like, dude, you're an idiot. But I know. So the first thing I do is, what do you do when you don't know how to do something? You Google it. And I typed in how to be a public speaker. And I can remember it was like chronicle.com or something. Like, if you type in anything like, how do I do this? Chronicle.com comes up with like the answers.
Yeah.
And the first thing Chronicle.com said was, look good. And I was like, shit, I'm screwed. Like, well, okay. So I can't really look good. So I guess I'll buy a suit at least. So I go out, buy a suit, a nice suit. And then the second one is write some notes down. And so I write some notes down, type some out, and then slide them up my sleeve the day of the event because I can't hold them because I got those splints on my hands to help me. And day comes where I'm speaking. I got this event and I'm terrified. I go to the event, wearing my suit that I got my notes up my sleeve. I look, it's a gym, and there's a stage. I get on the stage, and I look on both sides of the stage, and there's no ramp. It's only stairs. And this is the same guy that booked the bus with no lift. And I was like, dude, like, you just hate handicapped people, don't you? Like, that's where we're at now. And I wasn't gonna get my new suit dirty, so I wasn't scooting my butt up those stairs. So I just hopped up the stairs, one leg, hopped up. Somebody brought my wheelchair up. I sat down, and I started talking to those people, and I have no idea what I said to them. No clue.
Just straight blackout, like blackout. Start talking. Come to
Blackout.
like, oh, what happened?
Blackout. I forgot that I wrote notes down. I forgot that there were notes up my sleeve.
That's so
and
funny.
I have no clue what I said to him. And I only talked for 10 or 15 minutes. But the importance of that day for me was after it was over and not knowing what I said to those people without much of a plan going in, I realized that every single one of the people in that room was listening to me. And it was because I have a story, and the way I look, it's going to draw attention. That's just the way it works. Whether I like it or not, that's the way it works. And if I'm going to get that attention from people, I better come up with something worthwhile talking about so that I can help people. If I am going to have any kind of platform to help people, I better have something really good to help them with. Yeah. So that day when I spoke, even though I did not want to be a public speaker and it terrified me, and I'll even say it was something that I hated doing, that's the day that it became something that I needed to do. Not only because I knew it would help people, but also because it would help me. And it did help me that day. So it became something it started as something I hated, became something that I needed, eventually became something that I wanted to do. And today it's a love. It's something that I absolutely love doing. But it came from something that I hated. That's the growth of it. And, we're almost 17 years later. But I would tell you probably about year 6 or 7 after is when I started to really love public speaking, because I know I can help people. And there's some selfishness in it, because I am helped as well when I get to share with people, and people get to come up to me afterwards and tell me what I did for them. That means a lot to me. And that's my fuel. It keeps me going.
I completely understand it. And you should be made to feel good. You should be getting value back from it because of the value you provide. And when you do things in the heart of service, so you're trying to provide a value, it is only normal and natural that you're going to get an immense amount of value back from it as well.
Oh, for sure. I think about people that I hear, I got to do something for myself. Always worrying about everybody else. I got to do something for myself. When I'm doing stuff for other people is when I'm doing something for myself. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what it feels like. My reward comes from not doing nothing. It comes from doing something, and doing something for other people. Like, it feels good. So I always challenge people. Okay, you got to do something for yourself, but maybe that something for yourself is doing something for others, and it's helping people. But yes, there has to be some reciprocation at times. Those people have to, and that's, in our world of sweethearts and heroes, sweethearts are the people that carry hope for other people. If somebody's helping you out and has given you hope in your life, let them know. Tell them what they've done for you so that they will do it again for somebody else. That guy I told you about that gave me that opportunity to be a public speaker that first time, I actually just texted him yesterday. I got a text back from him today. That was over 16 years ago. He's somebody extremely important in my life, and I let him know what he's done for me, because I guarantee that makes you want to do it for other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick, thank you so much, brother, for coming on and just sharing some pieces of your story, some inspiring some people. I'm going to try to do something here.
Yeah.
I'm going to change my speaker to default. No, the MacBook. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There we go. Okay. I'm gonna take a video for Instagram so you can say hi to everybody and they can hear you.
All right.
If you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do this. Actually, cancel. Didn't do that. See if I can trying to make this screen bigger. I've never done anything like this. But I think this is super powerful. Hold on. Let's see. Nope. I don't know how to do it.
That's technology.
Oh, well. Technology. What are you going to do?
It's all good.
Okay. What's up, everybody? I am here. We are live with Mr. Rick Yarosh, and we are doing a podcast recording. He is telling his story. Super impactful. This is one of the most incredible stories of challenge, of obstacles, of overcoming those things, and in clinging on to hope. So, Rick, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to say hi to the audience.
What's happening, Greg's Instagram family? What's happening? I've been sharing my story for the past 45 minutes with Greg, and I never get tired of sharing the things that I've gone through in my life because I know it can help other people. And if you get an opportunity, make sure you check this podcast out with me, Rick Yarosh. It's been an amazing chance to inspire and help others.
That's it. All right. Be on the lookout for the episode when it hits, but always be the difference. We'll see you guys. Boom.
That was good.
I like it. That was so awesome, man. I appreciate it. Where can people reach out to you and find you if they want to learn more about you? I'm actually going to tag you in this now while I'm doing it.
Sweetheartsandheroes.com is where you can find the organization that I speak with. We're an anti-bullying campaign. That's what brings us into schools. We spoke to almost 2 million students across the country. But we can take the word bullying right out of the presentation. It's the same exact presentation. It's about taking care of each other and recognizing what the people around you are doing for you, and also recognizing what you can do for the people around you. So sweetheartsandheroes.com, all of the not all the social media. We're kind of an old person group. So all the social media, as in like Facebook and Instagram, and I think we have a Snapchat and maybe even a TikTok. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't use that stuff. I'm confused by it all. But I think we have one. So Sweethearts and Heroes, if you look us up, we're on all of that stuff. And I know actually we have some really amazing content on YouTube and all those things. So, yeah, man, I love doing what I'm doing. And again, I am a product of the people around me. Yeah, I have to be strong. That's for sure. We all have to have strength to get through things, but we also have to be mindful of the people that are around us that are helping us get through it.
Yep. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Do you have an Instagram? Are you at Rick Yarosh?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. That's me. Trying to tag you in this
yeah, that's perfect. And then I have my own social media stuff too, but again, I'm terrible with all that stuff. Awful.
Yeah. I'm still tagging you. So
look at my Instagram. My last post was over a year ago. Terrible. and then you'll see one that I did where I found a filter that I was on fire. And it was me singing Johnny Cash burning Ring of Fire while I was on fire.
That's at least you have some humor about it. I like that.
Dude, that's actually I have no ears and no nose. If I didn't have a sense of humor, I'd be screwed.
I find that most people in the military are like that anyways. We just have a really sick sense of humor.
Yeah. So
it kind of gets you through dark times.
My buddy who had pulled me out of that canal, when he was standing over top of me and helping me deal with it, I asked him a silly question. I said, "How bad is it?" And as a good friend would do in that kind of situation, you lie to the person. And that's what he did. He said, "It's not that bad." Well, I looked back at him and I said, "Well, at least I'll never be as ugly as you are." And I was just on fire for 30 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you got to have that sense of humor.
Yeah, definitely. So Rick, the last question I ask all my guests is, if you had the opportunity to sit down with, learn from, break bread with 3 individuals, anyone in history, alive or deceased, who would those 3 be and why?
All right. So my table's a strange table. It's a weird table. So number 1, Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Not
too strange.
Yeah, and that's a common answer, but mine is more like, I have faith in my life, but my faith is also outside of my health, my faith is my other struggle in the world. I want to have a stronger faith. I struggle with it. I really do. Just like I struggle with my weight. So, I just want to talk to him and have that conversation. Just get to know him. That's what I would want to do. The second one is Chris Farley, because there's no one cooler than Chris Farley. Now he is no longer alive.
Yeah.
But I loved Chris Farley. And the third, my table, unfortunately, is all deceased today, is Einstein. Einstein is my
He's
third.
a good one. I don't get that one a lot.
Yeah, well, Einstein, obviously one of the smartest people ever to live in this world. But he said some amazing things outside of like science stuff. He made a statement one time saying that this world is a dangerous place, not because of evil people, but because of those who choose to do nothing about it.
Yeah.
I want to talk to him about that, because that's a fact. There's always going to be evil in this world. We will never get rid of all the evil in this world. But when we do nothing about it, that's when we have the problem. When we let that evil thing, that evil person do what they do, that's when we have the problem. So I love that statement. You're never going to get rid of all the evil in the world, but if you don't do anything about it, man, that's where things can be bad. And that's my table.
I like all three of those. And I like that quote. I like how you brought that back.
That's amazing.
Especially given the state of the way that our culture and our civilization is today.
Right. So that puts the responsibility on us. That makes it easy to not point the finger at that person who's you believe is the person who's making everything so awful. Mm-hmm. Do something about it then.
Do something about it. Absolutely.
Get a group of people and say, you know what, we got to figure this out. What do we do? Yeah. Like, don't just say, oh my God, that guy, that girl, that woman. Like, come on, dude. Do something about it.
Yeah.
Be the change. There you go.
Be the difference.
That's right. Be the difference.
Be the difference. Be the change. I actually just tagged you and a bunch of people, in that story, and they also run podcasts. So you may be getting hit up to be like, and one of them's a good buddy of mine. He also was in the military. He had a bad attack. He's got some wounds. He's purple. He received the Purple Heart as well. And so him and I just spent this past weekend in Wisconsin doing an event, speaking on stage and kind of sharing our stories. So he's a good dude. He's got a great podcast. So I'm gonna link him up with you and be like, yo, you gotta get this guy on your podcast.
I'd love to talk to him, man. I love it. Again, I love sharing my story. I do it almost every single day. It's just a part of who I am. And people always will say also, don't let things in your life like make you become who you are. Mm-hmm. I don't know about that one either, man. Like I've embraced what happened to me, and it has become who I am. Because of my injury, I am much better than I was before. So don't let it affect you negatively, sure. Yeah. But if it's positive things, who cares if that shaped you? Let it.
Absolutely. Rick, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, brother. For all of you watching, for all the audience that watched up to now, then you obviously got value. So do me a favor. Go share this story. Share it to somebody else that can learn from it, that's in a dark spot, that needs that help to grab onto the hope by comparing their situation to somebody that they cannot really compare to because their situation isn't as bad. It may be difficult, and it may be in their mind. They may be within a prison in their own mind, and they feel like all hope is lost, but it's never lost. It's never lost. So share this with somebody that might also get value from it, that needs to hear this message. It takes you 30, 60 seconds to rate, review, subscribe, and share, but it means the world to both Rick and I. And you can also go show them some love on all of his platforms. This has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time, deuces.